All right, so now we're on 3.2. And so what they're going to do is they're going to give you a equation of a line. So as long as there's no squared values on here, this is just going to be a straight line. And we're going to show you kind of how to graph these lines by using kind of a table. And we're going to plug in the values. So number one is a little bit different than all the other problems for this section. So I just want to kind of show you, and we're going to be going back and forth between the actual assignment and our kind of our work. So I can kind of show you the difference of what they want us to do. But with number one, let's go to this. Let's see if I can move the little camera. Okay. So they're actually going to tell you which values they want you to use. So if you look over here, they're telling you what is x going to equal when you use when the y value is 0. So you'll have to plug in 0 where this y is, and then tell me what x is equal. Well, zeros are kind of the easiest ones to use, because if I put 0 in for y, okay, this is just going to say x minus 0 equals 5. Well, obviously, what does x got to equal? X is just going to be 5. So we're going to plug that in, and then I'll kind of go through it a little bit better in a sec. But this number one, they're going to have you do 3 different ordered pairs. So on this next example, they're telling you you're going to use the value of x to solve this, and what would y equal if I plug in the value of x. So I'm going to flip back to our work to kind of show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So with this first one, with when y is 0, so again, we're going to write the equation. That value, we're substituting that value in for y. So instead of y now, I'm going to have 0. Well, x minus 0 is just going to give me x. So we know our x is going to be 5. So that's that first value right there. So if you come to the next one, they're telling you you have to use 2 for x. So again, I'm using that same equation every time, but this time I'm putting 2 in where x was. And then I have to solve for y. I have to know what is the value of y. So the first thing I do is get rid of that 2 by subtracting 2 to both sides. The key here to remember is there is a negative y. So when I bring this down, I'm bringing down a negative y. In other words, that's like a negative 1y. So that y is not isolated in that form right there. So I still got one more step to solve for y, and that last step is divide negative 1 to both sides. So on this one now, my y value would be negative 3. And now I know they give us one more. Let's plug that value in here. We know that our y on that one is going to be negative 3. And then they want us to use negative 2 for y. So we'll solve for negative 2. So again, same kind of thing. We're using x minus y equals 5, but this time they gave us the y value they want us to use. We're using negative 2 for the y here. Now again, I got double negatives right here. So we know that's going to make that 2 into a positive 2. All right, anytime we have double negatives, minus a negative is going to make that a positive. And the last step is to subtract 2 from both sides. And I'm going to get x equals 3. So I'll put that 3 over here. So when y is 0, x is 5. When x is 2, y is negative 3. And when y is negative 2, x would be positive 3. So these are actually now we have 3 ordered pairs. So I have 3 different points that I can graph to come up with that straight line. Okay, so we're going to enter this last value in, and then I'm going to kind of show you how you graph these points. But let's keep in mind what our 3 points are. These are our 3 ordered pairs that we're going to use to graph this line. So we said when y was -2, our x was 3. All right, so here's kind of what you really got to be able to do. What it wants you to do is, using these points, graph the line. So what we'll do is we're going to click on this to enlarge the graph. Now I really want you guys looking at this graph now. Let's see, I guess I cannot move that over. Move this over a little bit. All right, so again, we know our points. You can almost see them over here. 5, 0, 2, -3, and 3, -2. So what the tool you want to use is, once you get in here, is this one right here, this line tool. So you're going to click on that. Now watch as I move within this graph here. Do you see these little points over here? Look at these, these numbers right here. See, as I move, those numbers change. Okay, so that'll kind of tell me where I'm at. So if I need to graph 5, 0, and I kind of make a mistake and I think it's right here. See how that says 0, 5? So you're going to know that that's wrong. So we're going to come over here to 5, 0. And once you get that point to where you want it, you have to click your mouse. Okay, to hold that there. Now look, as I move around, as long as I don't touch another point, I could put the next point wherever. Okay, but that point, that 5, 0 is locked. So I have 2 other points. I have 2, -3, which is actually right here. And really all you need to draw a line is 2 points. So it doesn't really allow you to even put more points in. Okay, your third point is kind of just your check. So that third point was 3, -2. So if I come over 3 and down 2, see how it's right on the line? If you come up with 3 points and your third point is like off over here, then you know it's wrong, because all your points should be right on the line. Okay, but the way I do it is I'm just going to require you guys to come up with 2 points. But again, if you want to do a third point just to double check, you're more than welcome to do that. But I'm going to clear this and just do it one more time with you guys. Again, you start with your first point, 5, 0. You're going to use this tool, line tool. Move it over to 5, 0, which is right here. Once you get it where you want it, click the mouse so it'll lock it in place. Then you don't click again until you come up to the next point. And then the next point was 2, -3. We come over 2, down 3, and then you click it again. Now it'll lock it into place. Once you have your line in place, you're going to hit save. And it'll transfer now that line to this big graph here. Then you check your answer, and you got it. All right. So let's go now. They only give you one problem like that, where they actually tell you the values. This is the type of problem that you're going to see more often in this section. So we're going to flip back to our work. All right. So you have x plus y equals -6. Again, what do I need in order to draw a line? I need 2 points. I need at least 2 points. So unlike number 1, where they tell you what values you can use, or they tell you what values you have to use, you can use any values you want to solve this problem. Okay, so you could pick a value for x and solve for y, or pick a value for y and solve for x, however you want to do it. So what I want to tell you guys is, when you see it in this form right here, we call this standard form, where your x and your y are together on the same side. The easiest way to graph these are using your x and y intercept. In other words, you're going to use the 0 for x and solve for y, and then you're going to use 0 for y and solve for x. As we get into some of these different problems, you'll want to do something maybe a little bit different. But this is really the easiest way to solve these, right? Because if I put 0 for x in this problem up here, so x is 0, right? What is y going to be? So basically that x is gone. What does y equal? -6. So it's really the easy way to solve these. Same thing, if I put y value for 0, I end up getting the same thing, right? What is x going to equal? -6. So that's all I really need. I need 2 points in order to graph a line. Right here, I got these 2 points. I got 0, -6 as my first point, and -6, 0 as my second point. I can come back to my graph here. And again, you're always going to kind of do these the same. You got to click here to enlarge the graph. There it is. Use your line tool. And again, the first point I'm graphing is 0, -6. And there it is. Again, if you look up here, it'll tell you where you're at. And once I get there, that's when I first push the mouse, or it's that left key. Now I'm not going to press it again until I get to my next point. That allows me to write my line, and you see as I move it around, the line kind of spins around. My next point is -6, 0, which is right there. Once I got it in place, I click it again, and that kind of locks that line. You're going to save it and check it. Fantastic. Okay. And that was, again, one that was x plus y equals 6. We're going to do one with a minus here, which is not going to be much different. So if we're using x minus y, again, it's in standard form. So I'm going to use my intercepts on that as well. So this is kind of how you could set up your table right once you have your x and y on the same side. But it's a little bit different here. If x is 0, I'm going to get -y equals 5. Okay, so I got a little more work to do because I got to get rid of that negative. So I'm going to divide a -1 to both sides. When x is 0, y is going to be -5. And just be careful. That's the only way you really make a mistake. If you just look at that and say, oh, if x is 0, y is 5. Not really, because it's -y. So I got to divide that, and that's how it becomes -5. But when y is 0, this is what I get. X minus 0 equals 5. Well, that is just going to be 5, because I don't care about, really the y is gone. That -y is gone. It's just x equals 5. So my 2 points, 0, -5, and 5, 0, those are the points that I need to graph, those 2 points. So I think this one's kind of already up. Let's see if I can get back into it. Well, no. Oops, let's move that over. Anyway, those 2 points, 5, 0 is here, 0, -5 down here, and it's kind of locked into place. It just kind of shows you how you can get to those points. All right, let's look for something a little bit different. Here we go. This problem, let's do a similar question so it's all cleared. All right, so we got x minus 3y equals -3. So here we are. Oops. So really, again, it's in standard form, even though now, before we didn't have value coefficients attached to these, and now we do. That's okay, because we're still going to use our intercepts. In other words, we're still going to solve for when x is 0, and we're still going to solve for when y is 0. It's just a little bit different if I have that x minus 3y equals -3, and I put 0 in for x. All right, then I get this, -3y equals -3, because the x's are basically gone. It's a single step algebra equation at this point where I divide -3 to both sides, and I'm going to get y equals 1. So when x is 0, y is going to equal 1. Now the y is going to be a lot easier because when I put 0 in here, -3 times 0 is just 0, right? So I'm not going to write x minus 0, x plus 0. It's just going to be 0. So x is going to be by itself. And x is going to equal -3. So again, my ordered pairs are going to be 0, 1, and -3, 0. So I'm going to come to my graph, come to back to the problem, slide this over. Enlarge your graph. Use your line tool. And again, my 2 points are 0, 1. Once I get there, click it, hold it in place. You don't have to hold it. I mean, just click it once and it'll be locked in place. Don't hold it down or anything. And then -3, 0 is our next point. We'll click that. Now it's locked in. Again, if you have to clear it or delete it, you can do that. We're going to save it, check our answer, and we are good. And I know I went right to our next type of problem. So let's get a new question on that, and we'll talk about that problem. All right, so on first few problems we were talking about were all in what we call standard form. Okay, where our x and our y were both on the same side. If you look at this one, and here's our y is by itself. This is what we call slope-intercept form, which is a little bit ahead. We'll get into that a little bit more. But when we were in standard form, when our x and y were both on the same side, we wanted to always use our intercepts to solve these. And again, really, you can use whichever numbers you want to solve these. You apply one of the values, and then you got to find whatever's missing. So you can pick what numbers you want. I'm just telling you that zeros are usually going to be the easiest. And then you want to use smaller numbers, 1, 2, anything like that. So if you look at this one, all right, the y is already by itself. So it's going to be, if we used a y value, in other words, if I put 0 here, I would still have to subtract the 6 and then divide the 3. So I wouldn't want to pick y values because that's going to be a little more work. I'm just going to pick my x values because the y is already by itself. So in other words, if I pick 0 here for x, it's pretty easy to solve this, right? So y is going to equal 3 times 0 plus 6. Well, what's 3 times 0? 0. 0 plus 6 gives me 6. So when I pick my x value, my 0 for my x value, my y is going to be 6. So I would just continue to pick values of my x. I wouldn't pick a value for the y. So I can pick whichever number I want. I would want to pick smaller numbers because, again, I got to graph these numbers. And there's only so many, and if you remember back to our program, there's only so far these numbers go. So the next easiest number I would pick would then be 1. So I'm going to have y equals 3 times 1 plus 6. Well, what's 3 times 1? 3. So 3 plus 6 would give me 9. So that's it, really. I only need 2 points. If you want to pick another point, you can. But as far as a graphing tool, you can only graph 2 points. So I'm fine graphing, picking 2 points. But if you want to pick a third one just to double check, that's really all you're using that third one for, is just to double check that you have it in the right spot. So again, my first point was 0, 6, and just be careful because some of these get real tiny. But again, you look up here, it'll tell you where you're at. 0, 6, and then my next one is 1, 9. So again, you just got to kind of move it to that right spot. And once it's there, once you see 1, 9 and up here, You know you're in your right spot. Hold it in. Save it. It'll save it down here, and then you check it. All right. So we got a couple of these that we have to talk about too. All right, so you have a couple of examples. I think that one was y equals -2. So if you look, the x is gone. So what that means is no matter what whatever, if you wanted to make a table, you still could. And what it means is no matter what you pick for your x value, your y is -2. So you pick any number, 0, 1, 2, that y is still going to be -2. So where's 0, -2? It's right here. 1, -2 is right here. 2, -2 is right here. So you'll see a pattern that no matter what values I use, that line's going to come out like this. In other words, it's going to be a horizontal line that crosses the y-axis at -2. And then the one that's going to be, if you get this, like x equals 3, that means no matter what value you pick for for y, your x would be 3. So if you got x equals 3, 3 zeros here, 3 ones here, 3 twos here, that is going to be a vertical line that crosses at x equals 3. So again, the y, if you just remember y equals -2, that's telling you it crosses the y-axis at -2 and it's a horizontal line. X equals 3 means it crosses the x-axis at 3 and it's a vertical line. You can't have a horizontal line at x equals 3, right? Because that's just your x-axis. So just remember, if you plot that point, y equals -2 is a horizontal, x equals 3 is a vertical. So we come back to so how do we graph that? You come at 0, -2, and as long as you find another point that has a y value of -2, then you got your horizontal line. Check it, and we're good. Let's find one with the x value. I think there is one. So we already talked about that. Here it is. Oh. All right, so again, it's x equals 3. That means you come to 3 on your x-axis and it's a vertical line. So as long as you have another point, don't put it at, as long as your x value is 3, it can't be 2.5, it's got to be 3. Any other point where your x is 3, then you'll have a vertical line. Check it, and you're good. Let's go back to 7. Okay, this one's pretty similar. You're just going to pick 0 for x and 1 for x, and you'll come up with your 2 points. I wanted to go to one with a fraction, though, to show you this one right here. Let's do a similar question. All right. So this is y equals 1/2 x, take away 1. So this is what it looks like again. We don't have, it's not in what we call standard form, it's the y's by itself. So we're only going to pick x values. All right. Again, 0 is easy because 1/2 times 0 is just 0. What's 0 take away 1? It'll just be -1. Let's do it the long way real quick. So this is again 0. And 0 take away 1 would give me -1. So that's how I get, when x is 0, y is -1. So this next value we need to pick. I can pick 1, but now it's going to give me a fraction, okay? And that's not a big deal, but if I don't have to have a fraction, again, I can pick whichever number I want. I would pick multiples of our denominator. In other words, multiples of 2. So 2, 4, 6, -2, -4. So in this case, I'm going to just pick 2. And let's look at kind of what happens when I do that. Okay, so this would be, again, you can write it as a fraction, solve it however you want. The 2's are going to cancel either way. Even if I do 2 over 2, this is going to end up giving me 1. Okay, so the 2's would cancel. I'm just left with 1 over 1 or just 1. Move the minus 1 over. What's 1 take away 1? 0. Okay, so you want to use, if you're using a fraction, use multiples of that fraction. So if I wanted to use 4, okay, so this would be like 4 over 2. What's 4 divided by 2 give me? 2, right? So 2 take away 1 then would give me 1. So for this example, I got 3 points. I only need 2, but I'll just double check that 4, 1. Make sure it's in the right place. So my first point is 0, -1. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. 0, -1 is right there. Then I have 2, 0, which would be right here. And I'm just going to check for 1 would also be on that line. So I feel pretty confident with my answer. Plug it in, check it, and we are good. There was one that snuck in there. All right, let's look at this one. So it's a little bit different. It's actually not in slope-intercept form or any of the forms we are familiar with because the x is in the front. Okay, that is not a big deal though. When I set up my table, I'm not going to pick x values because my x is by itself. So I'm going to pick values for y. And again, easy values. Whatever is going to make my life easier. I would use 0. So what's 6 times 0? So when y is 0, x is going to be 0. So that's my first point. It's going to cross at the origin. And then the next point I would use would be 1 for y. What's 6 times 1? So I got my 2 ordered pairs. You want to come up with another one, you can. If you don't feel confident, you want to check your work. So let's come in here. Should have picked one, a new one, but anyways, you'll see here. It crosses at 0, 0. And then my next point is, oh, I got to switch these around. The x is 6, the y is 1. I had them backwards. So it's 6, 1. You come over 6, up 1. And that's the other point. I just want to go through this and see if there's any other examples that I didn't cover. So that's all of those. So that's, I did a video for 3.1. This is my video for 3.2. And those are the 2 sections that are due Monday. Later in the week, as we get closer to Wednesday, I'll do the next videos for 3.3 and 3.4, as well as our review.